Thank you. All right, welcome back, everybody. I will pick up where we left off with public participation. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Going once, twice? Reports. Kathleen, you're the only one.
Ruth Ellen, you did put the report into the board.
I did,
Okay.
and you have access to the folder now.
Okay. So what I did is, as you know, I always present first with my goals. So what I wanted to do in this report was to focus in on those three goals and kind of the history behind the purchase of the internet program, and then see what questions you might have about it. So I went back as far as you can tell from No Child Left Behind Act, which does talk about breaking things down to student demographic factors because they didn't want to leave any child behind. And so that comes into play ultimately down the road when we're looking at a program that has resources for every student. Also teacher resources to not just for giving assessments or for student practice, but also resources for teachers to learn from. Resources, instructional resources that span across the grade band. So I wanted to then leave it open to you as to what questions you might have regarding this.
Regarding the math.
Regarding
or-
just the report, do you have any further questions about what I put in the report and kind of, the long path? Ultimately, I came on board in school year 21-22 last year. And so that program, the math program was budgeted for in the previous budget process. So being new, it took me a semester to get to know staff. I was primarily at Henry Wilson that year, did engage with their data meetings, and ultimately when it came to the second semester, we began that whole process of looking at programs, and they really wanted to look at it just from grades 4 through 8. It was only very later on, as the synopsis lets you know, that we expanded that to include K3.
I don't have any questions. I think it's very detailed.
I know, that's
I
what-
think it's stemming from the last meeting, the previous meeting we had. And again, for me, it was just voicing what the teachers were in the coaches and what they were doing. They felt like something was thrown at them and they didn't really have a voice. So it was really more about that timing culture. So for me, it's not about you're confident, like you know what you're doing. I hope you do, right? Like, so
Get my doctorate right
so,
now, so I
mean,
better.
so for me, it wasn't that. For me, it's just, if they're saying that they feel like it's not developmentally appropriate, they walked into their classrooms after planning everything all summer, and then we're told, well, now you have to use this, and this is the only thing you can use. So that was where I was coming from at the last meeting. And just how do we support these teachers, right, who are trying their best to get in, get their feet wet and figure it out and roll it out to their students with, no prior training.
Right, so
To September.
the
So
first
that
year
was,
is, the first year is kind of that opportunities for how do you implement it.
right.
And that's where we did have the contract with the provider to deliver that. And, even past history has been, an outside provider for that kind of professional development.
Is there
Going
any way-
forward, we definitely want to focus on professional learning. And that's where this plan was always to move to internal.
Is there any way, I know like with a lot of programs, they can actually have someone come in and like give the sample lesson and the teachers can sit back and watch someone unroll, roll that out. And is there an opportunity for that?
Those are certainly pieces I also connected with a company for another school district that we could go and visit. So they had given me that information. The timing at that point was again May,
Yeah.
not a good time with all the end of
I'm
the
just
school
wondering
year.
if we can get more opportunity for that,
Right.
for the teachers.
Or even, I mean, if we could somehow get a teacher from the school, if, I don't know, they kind of, we could borrow not borrow, you know what I mean? Have them come and,
You're
give them a little
basically
consultant
modeling
day or
lessons.
something,
Yeah.
yeah.
Give us a demo.
So, I don't
They go
know.
around and model, and then the second half of the day, the teachers can come back together with the consultant.
Right.
Yeah,
figure
it's
things out.
we don't have and trust me, I've been doing a lot of research through Eric, reading research literature. We haven't had an instructional coach. I mean, that's kind of where school districts go when they've implemented big programs, is kind of have an internal instructional coach to help facilitate that, not just the implementation, but then professional learning around that.
And that is something that I've put into ASSER for this next year, looking to hire an instructional coach. Again, it's difficult to find consultants these days too, like all other positions. But we're looking.
Another piece was we focused in on math because when I came on board looking at state assessment data, which is what I had access to as a non-district employee at the time, you know, it was clear that that was an area of need. Research also says, you know, focus in, don't try and tackle everything. It was an area, and there were funds available for the purchase of a program. Trust me, I felt a little press to get this kind of done too. It's not really, wasn't very comfortable myself, but, you know, we did what we could do, tried to go through all of the steps that would be not just reasonable, but professional in terms of using rubrics and looking at information and trying to do the pilot as best we could. You know, it would have been great if we could have done a year-long pilot. It just, there was no time to be able to use those funds that were kind of earmarked it. And at some point you start saying, do our students have to wait another year till we get caught up? There's also sometimes concern about a pilot that if you spend all that time, see, even for a year, delving into a program, and you decide you're going to switch to something else, or if you pilot 2 programs, that can be also uncomfortable for teachers who are then have to relearn something new after they spent time getting accustomed to something that they were doing in a pilot.
Well, I didn't really have any questions on the math piece, but more a comment on your third goal for, you know, supporting principals. And I really think that, I really hope that we can allow our principals to lead their buildings and really take ownership of their building. And hopefully with that type of support, they can listen to the teachers, what their needs are, and kind of steer the ship with, you know,
And
some direct
there's-
support, but really take some ownership. Because I think that might be, I think that's an area that we've been lacking.
And there's where there was the preference by building administration to not go into a program. And yet, we look at data,
Data said we needed to.
it was telling us to the contrary.
But that's where that, you know, that support, they, you know, if they're in the, deep in the minutia of day to day, you're, you know, not that they're not looking at data, but you're obviously looking at it.
And actually, for building administration in 2 buildings, we did a demonstrated success program through the winter together
Yeah.
to kind of build that data language. And we looked at all the different pieces of data that we had in our, in the 2 buildings. I think I should have pressed more or provided more research, evidence-based, best practices to assist in decision-making, but that's in hindsight.
Right.
And I also wanted to
It's just the
respect
voices.
school building autonomy, but recognize it's time.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Joel, did you have anything for Kathleen?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Course of the last week, I had someone reach out to me that has been in the district for 20-plus years. And this was unsolicited, by the way. And the response was, when they watched the last meeting, this person wanted me and to share with the board that this is not the first time. They've walked in the end of August, first part of September, and said, this is new. This is what you're working with this year. Do it. These are the rules, do it. And this is the discussion that I had, like I said, spanned approximately 20 years in this district. And I was told that it's happened at least 5 other times. That you walk in, boom, here you go, deal with it. So for this math program to be rolled out just like that doesn't make it right, and I think we've all learned from it. But I also wanted to point out that some of the frenzy over, wrong. Evidently, we didn't learn from the previous 4 times when it was handed the day school opened. Or we didn't hear about it. Maybe they just dealt with it, but I felt that it was important to understand that this was not this wasn't the first time it's happened.
And to speak to that too, transparency with the extraordinary needs grant.
You had
Had an
time.
opportunity to buy this year, and there are more programs in English this time that are going to be put in place, and social studies that connects with English, because we focused the previous year on math, or this past year on math. Next year, there had been we'd like resources for English. So the teachers will have new program in 4 and 5 for English, and then 6, 7, and 8 in English. We have new social studies resources for 6, 7, and 8. They've been craving those resources. Here at the high school, we do have the math program, the same program that is being used in Algebra 1 and 8th grade is rolling up into the high school here. And after the teachers here reviewed the program this past year, they're also going to have the same program for geometry and Algebra 2. That will be a benefit to students because it's the same platform that they'll have access to when they're rolling up into the high school. Also,
I think that continuity part is key.
Also, science will have new resources this year, just again, kind of connected with the math. And their print resources were quite old. So we were able to do that. So once again, there will be more resources in the building in September, but certainly we'll go about looking at professional learning for teachers in the gentlest way possible.
And as you're bringing new programs, I'm hearing year 2 of extraordinary needs is going to be reading and this. Are we involving those that have it handed to them? Are they involved in the decision-making process? We like this one, we don't like that
Yeah.
one, and this is why. They are included.
Because in math and science at the high school, for instance, math was implemented K-8 this year, this past September. For math and science, for the high school, it's not till next September. The history resources were not till next year.
But were the K-8 people, math associates, math instructors, were they involved in choosing which of them happened?
4-8 were
Okay.
fully involved.
Okay.
At each grade level, there were particular teacher representatives, say in 4th grade and 5th grade, because they teach all the content areas. And then in 6, 7, and 8, those specific classroom teachers for math were involved.
And for ELA, the
And for
same.
ELA then for this year in looking at the program.
And it's like one seventh grade math teacher, one eighth grade math teacher, whereas now it's every classroom. I guess my point is that if we want teachers on board and we want them to be able to do their best and be able to teach our students, there needs to be training. There needs to be time for them to reflect and figure out what's going right, what's not, get the support from you, an instructional leader, some consultant who's coming in. They need to be able to have a voice. And I keep saying that, there needs to be collaboration. You need to be able to let them work out the data themselves. If we force it, I'm saying we. If you force it and say, well, this is what the data is showing, then it's more of like a,
It's done to rather than organic.
yeah, it's like let them figure that out and come to that conclusion, because when they figure that out and come to that conclusion, there's gonna be easier buying. And then they're gonna be like, okay,
So
all
they,
right. So I guess that was really our conversation at Valley View. And that's all I can speak to, because I didn't do this at the middle school. And it sounds like they piloted it anyway and kind of had a voice in it, so.
teachers have,
That's
at
where I'm coming.
Teachers K also have had access to Renaissance Star data 3 times a year for the past couple of years. So, and that they do own, that's their own review of the data each time. And of course, their own classroom assessments.
And one of the things that we had put into a prior teacher's contract, trying to get in more professional development time. It did not go over particularly well with the release time for those Wednesdays. But we need to find a way to get more time in the contract. Because when I don't have the means to have teachers come in for an extended time without students to get that training, it's a problem. And when it then leaves us a day or a day and a half at the beginning of school, and that's really all I can require them to be here for, it's not enough.
Right.
It's not enough. And while we're trying to do NEASC, while we're trying to do all these other pieces, it's not enough to say, well, we have an early release day once a month, and which ends up being, I think, 6 of them.
There's grant
But-
money. I mean, I know teachers right now who just went to
we-
Vegas for a week, and now they're coming back, and they're gonna be spending another week now unrolling that, so.
We,
there's, like,
we
so
do
if
have
you
some
come up
grant
with
money.
Grant money, like, and give the teachers that opportunity, at least that opportunity is there.
Part of the issue we haven't
during the
had
summer.
is then I can't, if somebody says, I'm not gonna come in and spend my summer doing that, I have no means to say, everyone gets the same training.
At least it's there,
Right,
and
Right.
those who
Yeah.
want
Want.
to are
can't,
gonna be compensated for it.
Right. right.
And can.
Yep.
So, and I think we have a lot of teachers who would be willing
Mhm.
to do that.
And I think we owe that to our kids.
Yep.
We owe them to give our teachers the tools, the
Mhm.
resources,
No question.
so they can raise those metrics. Not that, all we're looking at is metrics, but for somebody
It's a
that's
systemic picture.
right.
Mhm.
I don't want to focus solely on that, but that's what somebody sees as the overarching picture.
So, and that's why we did this year, support it with, we have 4 full professional development days for the math, and then it was 7 30-minute check-ins where then we would follow it with a debrief. And I know there were, it was about implementation, and it wasn't about professional learning as much as it was about implementation. And so, okay, buying a full year worth of professional, what didn't work. So I know at the end, there were people saying, but we told you we didn't like this. We had already had this contract. So in the very end of the school year, I just made it optional for whomever wanted to participate. There was no expectation. I mean, sometimes what happens in districts who have large amounts of federal fund, so you can in fact afford those big professional development contracts. So it didn't work out.
Well, nobody likes change, but here we are. But we don't need to keep, I feel like we're like beating a dead horse about the mapping, but I think we all know the hits and misses. Did anybody else have anything for Kathleen?
Thanks for the history. I really like the write-up.
Yep.
Helpful. Thanks. Thank you.
You weren't even born in 2001. Stop it.
I like the history.
Yes, I
lesson Also. New business. I didn't have anything. I didn't know.
I have
any
one, I don't know if it's new or old.
Medium business.
It's just business, okay? Pickleball courts, people want to know what the
Oh,
heck's
yeah.
going
Oh, yeah.
on. There was a
So,
whole thing about
we-
something, yeah, and
The rec center had wanted to do a pickleball tournament. We had the vandalism on the courts. It's in the process of being repaired. And so at the point that we can then say, okay, yes, we can open it back up again. I would love to just be able to say, yep, the courts are back open and
Right.
there's, you know,
the vandalism was,
we had someone went in and tore up our newly resurfaced court, had several sections that were torn up. And so we're in the process of getting that part fixed and then need to make some decisions about, is it only by sign up? Is it just open in
Do we
general?
have
And then
cameras on the.
we'll chat about that in our next piece.
says they, do you have a time frame on the repairs and reopening of the, so that they could be reopened?
Larry's been working on that and we had a date and it got pushed back and I need to go back and double check with him
Wasn't
on
the
that.
rain? was
I
it?
was just gonna say, I don't think the rain had anything to do with
I'm sure it has nothing to, yeah.
And then the second question was, if they get that fixed, are we gonna have nets?
I'll ask.
There are new
Do
nets,
you need
but
nets
we
for
haven't,
pickleball?
yes, you do.
I don't know anything
But
about
we
it.
have, we haven't
Oh,
put up new nets because we're waiting for resurfacing,
Okay.
so.
So the summarization is, we're working on it, as soon as we
To-
can
Yes,
open the doors back up,
we
we'll
will
blast it out.
put it everywhere that it can go.
Yeah.
And I would
It
love
gives
to,
everybody time to pick up a pickleball racket.
that's right.
I
I would
assume it's a
love,
racket. I don't know.
Yes,
See,
it
I'm
is.
spreading
It's a
false
racket as well.
information here.
it's kind of
Me either.
between
Oh, like
squash and tennis.
Nope, no
Um,
idea.
And it's actually, it's going to become an Olympic sport. It's a big deal.
It's
It's a
going
very big
Olympic.
deal.
I've just heard it's the
Yeah.
fastest growing sport
Mhm.
in the United States. And yet I still haven't seen it, so I don't know if it's,
And I,
YouTube it.
yeah.
There's definitely something you can watch.
all I can tell you is I know
Put it
that a
up on the
lot of
screen.
older folks are doing it, and it's like tennis and racquetball and things are really high intensity for
It's
them.
high energy and high intensity without necessarily the needing to run
Bolting back and forth.
back and forth. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay. That's
Um,
interactive.
yeah. So
Okay.
yes,
And
hoping
they-
to
and
get
yes,
that.
there
Sounds like
will
a
be-
staff development day to me once they're open. I don't know.
Yes, there will be a school board team,
Yeah.
All right.
and we're gonna take on,
You haven't seen my athleticism then.
Hey, I'm the one that falls and breaks things.
Was you said you had two? Was
Oh.
pickleball?
No, the net.
No, the
Oh, the
The
net's
net.
the second.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So we're not gonna order the nets until the ground is fixed, is that what I heard?
I think
think
we
we
have
have the nets,
some,
yeah.
at least some in. There were orders and supply chain's been interesting, but my understanding is that we've got something.
Okay.
But, and now there's tennis nets and pickleball nets, and I don't know that we have purchased pickleball per se. So
Okay.
it's lined for pickleball. We may have to talk about whether we're changing out, and because we have poles there, I don't know that the nets are exactly the same length will deal, but
Okay.
depends
But if
upon
there's-
how competitive we're getting. I don't think we're hosting any big money tournaments
Right,
yet.
yeah.
So,
But if
Um,
there's any lead time and then because of the popularity, it may be something we wanna
Yeah.
think about. I'd rather have them on the shelf than
Right.
find
Right.
out we can open them in January.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, they might not be waiting for the courts,
Right,
but
yeah.
we'll have to shovel them.
Any other?
We
Sure.
had in the folder, there is a quote for the roofing piece. We've had, as I put in my superintendent's memo, we've had some more leaks here at the high school with our rains, largely due to where the Firestone system that was the newer piece of the roof that we put in joined with the old system. It has ruffled and we've gotten water in underneath. Technically, it is still under warranty. The company hasn't been particularly responsive, but we are looking to try to at least go back to Firestone, which is the parent company that the licensees are franchised from or what have you, and go and say, okay, we've got these pieces, these are leaking. We've had some leaks at Henry Wilson as well. We did have Tremco come up. They are the ones who did the former system that we had. They took a look at it, did identify where the leaks were for us. We have some pictures. And did give us a quote for tying it, sealing where the two systems come together, and then doing a maintenance contract for making sure that things are where they need to be. Right now, it's, I would say, more informational than anything because I don't have anything back from Firestone to give you a comparison with. But I wanted to at least let you know that it's there, and now that it started raining again, hopefully we won't be shifting buckets. And then the other quote that's there, I'd like to take in non-public, if that's. Then the indoor air quality reports, those go to the DOE by June 30. That was put up for information for you. And then the last piece was late breaking today. We have an adequacy update as of today, and there was also a school boards association email on the same topic, if you saw that earlier. When the biennial budget was done at the end of June, and we just got this today, but they changed the formula for adequacy. Surprise, once again. And with that change, based on 2022 numbers, they haven't calculated adequacy on what we just put in for EOY last Friday. We would be right now, estimate from November to estimate today, stand to gain about $233,000. With that, just like we ran into with the Extraordinary Needs Grant last year, this is unanticipated funds because they changed the formula. So I couldn't have anticipated it even based on the numbers that we've had. So it's $233,874.26, provided the numbers stay the same, which we know that it won't. So it will shift a little bit. If we are looking to take that money and return it toward the tax rate, we need do nothing. If we are looking to be able to use that as an expenditure, then we would, or to be able to expense that, we would need to have a special deliberative session like we did last year for the Extraordinary Needs Grant. We won't have the more solidified estimate, and it's still an estimate, until the end of August. Which means that I can't warn anything for a special session until I find out what that number is, unless we do an up to, which gets messy. So this is really more informational right now so that you know what's there, you know why it's there. I've included the November 15th estimate as well as the one that we got today so that you can see them and compare. If you click into the email that I forwarded from the DOE, it gives how it would be calculated for next school year, SY24, the one that we're in, and for SY25. But when you look at the tables for each, it gives the exact same figure for Farmington, even though the calculations are not supposed to be exactly the same. So again, these are preliminary numbers. I suspect there may also be something else there that we'll tweak. But for right now, you have what I have within the same 12 hours I had it. So.
Anybody have any questions on that?
No.
Unfinished business. Okay. Oh, well, it's not, well, I guess it's kind of unfinished. I meant to bring it up when the, folks from the PTA were here. But somebody had asked me about the Tiger Trail. And that it hasn't been painted
Right.
in recent memory.
That was actually, it was a joint grant that was done with the school and the town. I know that Brian Blake was the lead on it, but I think because it involved painting on sidewalks that are not school grounds, it was a
Right.
joint effort. We certainly could look at doing that through another combined effort. There are some real pros and cons to the Tiger Trail. And so we can talk about that
Yeah,
as far as what, does it help some kids know where to go? Yes. Does it also tell people this is where the little kids are? Yeah. So,
I mean, I think everybody can Google a school and figure out, I mean.
more or less where they're going to be coming from. Yes,
On the ground or not.
correct.
Different breadcrumbs, I suppose.
Right.
Right.
Right. So, if that's something that the board wants to put as a priority, I'm certainly more than willing to work with Ken, Dicky, and see what we
Yeah, I mean, I
can
don't
get
know
done there.
how high on the, I'm sure we have other top priorities. But just as, you know, maybe once we get those weekends kind of solidified with the PTA and the rec, maybe there are some volunteers in that group that would want to paint. If
Right.
we have the blessing of the town or
Was
whatnot.
did that come from the PD, the grant, the original grant?
I'm
For
not
some
sure if it was
reason,
through
I
the
thought it did
PD, it might have been.
Yeah.
It was a safety grant.
Yeah,
Right.
It was a
Which is
safety grant.
Why I would think it would have come out of maybe James or whoever was chief at the
right.
time.
But I
Yeah.
seem to remember,
I want to say it was PD,
me too.
which just, I mean, Ken could reach out to Scott or Evan at this point and say,
Right.
have you seen anything? Because they're always checking grants,
Right.
and they may have seen something of that nature come up.
Hmm.
Might not be the same exact flavor, but
Right,
if
and,
it does the trick.
and I don't know how many roads have really changed,
Paint
or
is very,
anything that
very
we've
expensive.
changed since then, I don't know.
Yeah, because
the-
it's
really
not just Rust-Oleum that we're putting on.
Right,
And
the
it's not
sidewalk.
rattle can.
Right,
You gotta,
yeah.
Like,
But we can certainly look at it and see. I mean, the trail started more or less from downtown up to, and it was kind of either side of the,
yeah. Yes, the one side.
yeah.
That was all I had for unfinished business. Anybody else have anything on your list? Joel?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Okay, just wanted to.
Thank you.
All right, we're back to public participation. And I'll jump at once. Our next meeting is scheduled for July 24th, 2023. We have some manifests to sign. And I will make a motion to go into non-public session 2 under RSA 91A3 to ABC nominations and resignations. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Have a good night, everybody.
Night, Joel.
Well, no, he's still